When I was growing up, my dad was always in charge. This included what we ate for breakfast, what clothes we wore, and everything else. My mom was a bit of a homebody, so she agreed with everything he said. He was the king of his castle, and my brother and sister and I quickly learned that nothing could be done without his approval. It was almost a surprise to me when he let me borrow the family car for the weekend. If I ever said anything that could be construed as disrespectful, I had to either cancel the date or walk away. It was 2 miles to the nearest business, and our small town had no public transportation or cabs. This was before we started hitchhiking, but we probably wouldn't have done either. I did well in school. After high school, I was able to live at home and attend a community college 30 miles from home. By then, my mom was working as a department secretary at the community college, so we were able to commute. This wasn't too conducive to my social life, as I had to meet my mom at 5 p.m. sharp to drive home. If we both weren't home by 5:30, hell awaited us. My dad had an associate's degree in accounting, which allowed him to do bookkeeping for several small companies in town. He was willing to participate in getting us an associate's degree, but since a 2-year degree suited him just fine, he saw no point in investing in our higher education. Since my grades in college were good, I was able to get a scholarship to attend a state college that was only 60 miles out of town. 2 of my high school buddies drove me there. They let me ride with them, paying only for gas. I found a part-time job between classes, and that allowed me to earn money for gas and for books and fees not covered by my scholarship. My younger brother and sister were now carpooling to college with my mom. My boss at my part-time job offered me a raise and more hours, and I accepted. He really trusted me and provided the money to buy a car. For some reason, this made my dad very angry. He refused to put me on his auto insurance, and I had to pay for a separate policy. At least my mom stood up to him somehow, and I was able to still live at home. Now I was staying late at school or work until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, so I had to buy lunch and dinner from the student union. It took me 3 years to get my accounting degree, but the extra year was worth it to have a modest social life. It pissed my dad off too when I made one-night stands with the opposite sex, but my mom convinced him that boys will be boys. Who knows what kind of shit my sister would have to go through if she ever had a one-night stand date. With my fresh accounting degree and good grades, I was able to get a job at an accounting firm in a neighboring town. I rented an apartment and finally got out from under my father's reluctant tutelage. I continued to go home for visits, usually once a month. That left 3 weekends a month for dating, and I was able to have fun every now and then. I rarely went out during the week because I was studying for my CPA exams. I tried to study 3 to 4 nights a week, and I managed to pass the exams by the time I had 3 years of experience. I found a new job at a regional buying club as an assistant controller. I was now only traveling out to solve audit problems at stores located in other cities. I was now able to party hard 7 nights a week and became a regular at nightclubs and parties. All of that stopped when I met Lila. She wasn't the prettiest girl in the world, but she had a nice figure and became very sexy once I got her loose. Not that I was the sex king of the city's nightlife, but I had learned to control my ejaculation, and if it took my partner 15 to 20 minutes to experience a rush of ecstasy, I could last as long or even longer. Lila told me that I took her ecstasy cherry. Following my father's example, I established that I was in charge. Since Lila had never been a manhunter and had never experienced multiple gratification with anyone else, she readily agreed. I enjoyed being with her as she had a keen sense of humor and a very sweet personality. She was a little shy, but my friends, both male and female, all seemed to like her. Everything was fine, and when I proposed to her, she was very excited and showered me with kisses and I love yous. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. 2 years later, we bought a starter home, and another year later, we bought a small lake house. Delilah Ann Morgenstern. I grew up in a science family. My parents paid much more attention to my older brother, but since there were only 2 children, I was not neglected. My father was happy when I started studying chemistry, and after college, I got a job as an assistant scientist in a small lab doing mostly testing for a large corporation. I dated random people, never getting into a serious relationship with anyone until I met Max. I had learned that guys expect sex no later than the second date, and so on the second date, after a few kisses, petting, and putting on a bra, Max turned his couch into a bed. He wasn't the biggest guy I'd ever dated, but he kept stroking me while my arousal built up. It seemed no other guy could last long enough for me to climax. It was the best seizure of my young life when it finally happened. I got to know his studio apartment pretty well. We'd usually have a drink, make out a little, and then I'd help him take the sofa bed apart. I don't know when it became love and not just lust, but a few months of sex on his sofa bed prepared me for his proposal. I myself was amazed at how happy he made me. We had a small wedding in a non-denominational church and began married life in a real one-bedroom apartment with a real bed. It was even better than the sofa bed we kept as a couch and bed for guests. We turned the second bedroom into an office with separate desks. We got into a routine of married life, usually making love on weekday evenings, and on weekends at least twice and often 3 times. Sometimes we attended Friday or Saturday night parties. Sometimes we went to a club to drink and dance with friends or alone. One Friday night after work, we went to a club called Night Owl Lounge, which was between my work and our house. It wasn't crowded, and a cute guy asked if he could sit at our table while he explored. I can't explain it, but I immediately felt a connection with him. He stepped aside to dance with a girl. Apparently, they didn't work out, because after one dance, he returned to our table, sipping the beer that had been left there. We chatted briefly. He introduced himself as Harry, and I introduced myself as Max and Lila. It turned out he was a lawyer working for an insurance company. It didn't seem very interesting, but he turned out to be a lively conversationalist with a warm baritonal voice, and I felt my blood boil inside me. I realized that Max was going to get a real high tonight. Harry then asked if it would be okay if he danced with me. It was unusual since I wasn't a stud magnet, but Max nodded in agreement, and I took Harry's offered hand and joined him on the dark dance floor. The Night Owl didn't have live music, but they usually put on good music there. Our first dance was slow, and he wrapped one arm around me, placing his palm against my side, just above my hip, and holding my free hand in his warm palm. I realized with surprise that I was panting, suppressing the urge to moan. I just hadn't realized it. I'd barely met this guy, and I was already so horny. When the song ended, he lightly touched his lips to mine, which turned me on even more. We started to walk back to our table, but then another slow song came on, and he asked, "Can we?" I nodded affirmatively. He led me to the far edge of the dance floor where there was a little more room. When the song ended, he whispered, "My spot isn't far away. Shall we go?" I smiled and led him to the door. I couldn't believe what I was doing. I saw Max looking at me like WTF. I kissed him and said, "Later." I think I was as stunned by my behavior as he was. Harry seemed to think it was the most normal thing in the world. I knew I was walking out the door, leaving my husband of 5 years alone. I had no idea if he would take me back or not, but I knew this was going to be an unforgettable night for me. Harry had a very nice apartment. As soon as he closed the door, we started kissing. We kept kissing, leaving a trail of clothes on the way to his bedroom. I don't think I had experienced as many pleasurable emotions in a week as I had in the last hour or so. I collapsed onto the bed. I couldn't believe what had happened to me, but deep down, I knew I would want it all again. He whispered in my ear, "That was just amazing. Let's get some sleep and do it again." I replied, "Sounds like a plan." I texted Max, "I'm fine. I'll see you later." For a moment, I wondered if I should send it or not. Decided what the hell, he might be worried about me. It couldn't hurt, even if he was already preparing divorce papers. I didn't get a response, and I didn't expect one. Even if he'd accepted my outrageous behavior, There was no point in answering him. Harry and I fell asleep, but we woke up early in the morning and pounced on each other like wild animals. I think it was even better than our first episode. We fell asleep again, and the next episode happened when it was already light outside. I don't think it was as good as the first 2 rounds, but good enough that he made me toast and coffee, exchanged phone numbers, and then asked if it was time for me to go home. I replied that it was fine as long as we did it again. He said he would call me. It was between 8 and 9 when I walked across the yard and up the steps to our front door. When I walked in, Max was drinking coffee at the breakfast table and watching the morning news. He asked, "Did you have a good time?" I replied, "Yes, but I'm sorry, Max, for leaving you like that." He replied, "Don't worry about it. Do you want some coffee?" I inquired, "Yes, please." "Are we okay, Max?" He indifferently replied, "As good as could be expected." I sipped my coffee and told him, "I need to shower and change." He again neutrally replied, "Please." When I showered and changed and went downstairs, he was already gone. I was a little concerned about his reaction, but as long as Harry called, I wasn't worried. Maximum, what the fuck? Everything was going so well. I thought I was on my way to becoming a family man. Friday night, we went into the fucking Night Owl for a drink after the work week, and she went home with a fucking male dog. I was going to kick that bitch to the curb as fast as I could. I didn't know exactly how I was going to proceed yet, but I knew I was going to kick too. I'd have to stay calm and be polite until I worked out a plan, but she was going to regret the day she decided to leave me sitting alone in the Night Owl's goddamn living room. It was almost 9 o'clock when the slut returned. She looked quite pleased with herself. Now I hated her at least as much as I used to love her. I tried to be polite but neutral in our interactions. When she went upstairs to shower and change, I made sure I was on my way to my golf game. I could have a drink at the clubhouse to kill time before the game started. It would also calm my nerves. I didn't want to be tense when I hit the ball. I had a good golf game. I decided that if she wanted to have sex with makeup on, I would go along with it. I hated her for what she did, but I still thought she was a sexy little thing. I wouldn't mind going down that road again, just so long as I didn't have to make out with her. That night, she wore her sexiest negligee with no underwear, and I knew I was going to get it. The sensation was actually quite pleasant. I don't know if it was the effect of her nighttime sin or if she was trying to make amends, but she was unusually passionate and experienced a couple more passions than usual for us. The heightened passion carried over to our Sunday night tete-a-tete as well. I still didn't have a plan, but I knew I had to get her out of the house. Since we had real estate, I would have to go to a lawyer, so Monday morning I made an appointment for Tuesday with what I thought was a good divorce attorney. Maybe he'll have an idea on how I can burn this bitch and her buddy. Lila. I was so happy when Harry called me Monday morning at work. I asked, "What's up, Harry?" He replied, "Yeah, so whenever I think of you." I said, "How nice. Are you up to something?" He admitted, "I don't have any plans for the weekend." I explained, "We have a cabin. It sits by a lake, and there are hiking trails. We can come Friday night and stay until Sunday if you're interested." He replied, "I'm interested. What do I need to bring with me?" I continued, "The main thing is yourself. Also bring good shoes. It's probably too late to swim in the lake, so plan on just canoeing and hiking. I don't fish, but you can if you want to. Should I sign you up?" He replied, "Only if you bring a couple sexy negligees with you." I replied, "Count on it. I'm already getting horny at the thought of it." He said, "I think we agree." I told him, "Text me when you're near my house." I don't think Max will be thrilled about it, although he seems to have tolerated Friday night okay. He said, "Sounds like a plan. I'll see you at 7. Bye." I replied, "Bye." That night I took the bull by the horns and told Max that Harry and I were planning to use the cabin that weekend. It surprised me that he was only mildly displeased and approved of Harry and I using it without a fight. Maximum. I couldn't believe the nerve of that bitch. She actually wanted to use our cabin for a date with her lover. That gave me an idea. I told her, I'm not thrilled about it, but it's your cabin too. If you insist, I won't argue with you. If you get cold, know that there is a propane heater in the closet. Don't forget to bring matches. It was already October, and I wondered. I hope her boyfriend isn't smarter than this stupid bitch. With any luck, they'd use the heater and forget to air out the window. That would kill both birds with one stone. No fuss, no hassle. Best of all, no lawyers, and I inherit her share of all our joint assets. It took an effort not to jump for joy. Even if they don't use the heater this weekend, that will be even better. It will be a testament that I've come to terms with her lover's situation and won't do anything to disrupt the love train. Lila, Harry and I had a great weekend. We got naked on Friday when we arrived at the cabin and didn't put on a stitch until it was time to pack up and leave Sunday afternoon. We hiked naked, canoed naked, and best of all, we had sex naked, morning, afternoon, and evening. The weather was beautiful, and we had sex in the canoe, on the hiking trail, and even on the bed. It was the most fantastic weekend of my life, even better than my honeymoon with Max. I will always be grateful to Max, as he was responsible for my first PIV orgasm, but he just couldn't make me love Harry. I wasn't sure if I loved Harry or not, but there was no doubt in my mind that I was in love with his wonderful man. The following week, we met on Wednesday night and finalized our plans for another weekend at the cabin. Maximum. I was finding it increasingly difficult to keep a neutral expression on my face when dealing with this lecherous damsel. She came back from the weekend with a smirk. She couldn't contain her happiness at having cheated on me. Even worse was the fact that Wednesday night she went out on a date. I didn't mind the lack of a line, but I hated the thought of her giving it to her bastard boyfriend. She informed me that she and her lover would be using the cabin again this weekend. The weather was getting cooler this weekend. With any luck, they would turn on the gas heater and be done with it all. It was hard, but I knew I had to be patient a little longer. If not this weekend, then maybe next weekend. Lila. When we got to the cabin, it was just like last weekend all over again. We stripped down and entertained each other until we passed out. Harry asked if I was chilly. I replied that I was. We started the propane heater and soon the cabin was hot. We ate dinner and I turned it off, deciding that we didn't want to sweat too much during sex after dinner. Once again, Harry was just great. I got up and turned the heater on low and we snuggled up against each other and fell asleep. Maximum. When Lila didn't return Sunday night and didn't answer her cell phone Monday morning, I called the local sheriff and explained that my wife had used our cabin for a date with her lover and hadn't returned when she was expected. She also did not answer her cell phone. A couple hours later, I received a call from a sheriff's deputy asking if I was sitting still. He then gave me the bad news. I suppressed a cry of joy and said, "Oh God, no." I muttered, "Oh God," several times. Then I pulled myself together and asked, "How did this happen, sir?" He replied, "We think it was the propane heater, either carbon dioxide asphyxiation or carbon monoxide poisoning or a combination of both. The coroner's report will probably be more decisive." I said, oh shit. I told her to be careful about ventilating the damn thing." He continued, "Now there's nothing you can do about it. When do you think you'll be able to come here and identify your wife's body? Will you be able to identify Mr. Armstrong?" I said, "I think I can get here this afternoon. My wife and I weren't as close as we used to be, but I still loved her. We were still close when she wasn't with her lover. I only knew her boyfriend as Harry, but I could still recognize him." The deputy replied, "His driver's license says Harrison Jerome Armstrong. We haven't been able to contact his next of kin." I told him, "I'll see how I'm doing this afternoon. Maybe I can get a friend to take me there. Where would you like me to go?" He explained that the coroner's office was near the square. I ended up driving there myself. I didn't feel like pretending to be grief-stricken for the entire hour-long drive. The coroner's assistant led me into a cold room, and I recognized Lila's body. She was lying there with a calm face. The deputy said, "She felt no pain." I almost fainted, but not from grief, but from remorse. What I'd done, so she screwed up after all. Should she die for it? I took 2 lives for trespassing on my love. I realized that I would have to come to terms with what I had done. I held back a few tears as the assistant helped me back to my car. I didn't feel good about myself. I wasn't feeling the jubilation over the outcome I had hoped for. I loved her and enjoyed having sex with her, even after she slept with Harry. I just had to get over it, no matter how long it took. I don't remember well the drive back, the funeral, and the week that followed, which was the hardest week of my life, more because of guilt than grief. I remember my father patting me on the back and muttering, "Son, son, 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 son." It was a great surge of emotion for him. I, on the other hand, was a little sad that I would never see her again, even though she was an egregious fraud. Life goes on, and I was sure that both guilt and longing would fade into the background of my life, and I would fall in love again.